wanted freedom. Adjust the frames, got keys to kingdom, unlocking chains. Sober the podcast, open up your brains. Sober the podcast, let's get it, man.
Welcome back to another episode of Sober the Podcast with your host Bradley Saxon. Got Mr. Nobles back. I feel like it's been years. Mr. Nobles and Mr. Carlton in the lab today. It's been a few weeks since we record. They wouldn't know that because we got about 18.
Yeah, I got them in the
pocket.
The pocket. But today we got a special guest. Actually, a friend of ours, Mr. Allen Cothran, in the house.
What's up?
Yes.
And Allen, unlike the last few guests we have, has a history with addiction. And we clarified that when others come on. I think some of them did text us back because he was like, I really want to go help with the podcast, but like, I don't know, like...
I've been sober for like my whole life.
Yeah.
Well, like, Woody was that way, you know? Like, I think Woody was a little hesitant because he was like, I don't really have a history of addiction. I was like, really, Sober the Podcast isn't necessarily just target. I mean, we obviously target the people that God's called us to help, but it ain't just for them. I mean, it's really for people who have a redemption story of how Jesus rescued them. And that's been a cool facet because we've had some people on the couch with us that just have such beautiful stories, and we get to hear things that a lot of people don't know. We get to see the story behind the face, and that's been the coolest thing is how this couch has really been a level ground for people to come in, their titles go away, you know what I mean? Like, who they're affiliated with goes away, and it's just like, man, we're a family of God.
Yep.
I love
And we've been born again, and let me tell you how Jesus rescued me, and that's been a really cool playing field this has done. So, all right, Alan, the way we start this thing is we have a tradition called the three-pointer.
All right.
And CJ spends about a week on these questions.
Okay. Come
So
on,
his
CJ.
whole objective is to stump you. Now, he asked some pretty hard questions, but maybe today he won't have some that's that hard.
I think I might have gave you the benefit
All right.
on these.
Let's hear him.
All right, so who is the most famous golfer from Furman University? Ooh,
Male and female.
just male.
That's when you know he knows a good answer when he's like male or female.
Yeah.
Well, our female golf team's better. Is it Faxon?
Brad Faxon?
Yeah, there you go. Hey.
Brad Faxon.
Got
Got
it.
you one.
Not to be mistaken
Confused.
as Brad Saxon.
Yeah, yeah. Not
Two
to be
totally
mistaken.
different golf games there.
Yeah.
Yep, so got the first one.
Good
so you'll
job.
You'll get one shot at the end.
All right.
All right. What basketball player from Furman University famously scored 100 points in a game?
What?
Yeah.
I know that one.
I want to say I've never heard that question.
And he's the only male Division I player to ever do it. There's been a lot of D3s and D2s that have done it, but he's the only Division I player to ever do it.
I got nothing.
Okay. What you got,
No,
Cliff?
I didn't. I thought it.
What you was
I
going to
thought
say?
Wilt.
No, that was
Okay.
early.
That was in the NBA.
Early
though.
NBA.
Yeah. Okay. So it's Frank Selvey.
Bro,
No,
come on,
I
dude.
didn't
Frank-
know it.
I'm just saying,
I've never
bro.
heard of
Furman,
Frank
like that's
Selvey.
a
No,
fun
I mean,
fact of Furman.
I graduated. I should know that.
Yeah, that's fun fact of
But I
Furman.
had,
You'll
I had
always
no
know it
idea.
from here on
Yeah,
out.
Selvey, Frank
Yeah.
Selvey. All right.
And then I pick you
Have
back.
you heard that name?
Now that he says it, it seems like I've heard it, but I would have never.
I
I
don't-
mean, you could have given me 100 guesses, I wouldn't have gotten that.
Yeah.
So
I was a Furmanite too.
okay,
Like early teenager.
that's what I'm
Like
talking
all
about.
the Furman stuff, man. So
Okay. It's a
all
good
right,
place.
All right, so let me piggyback off of
Okay.
that, and I think this might be a little easy. Who is the only professional basketball player to score 100 points in a game?
Chamberlain.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's
2 or 3.
easy. You
Yeah,
that's
I
what
just
you was
answered.
thinking.
He said
Yeah,
Chamberlain
but
went to
not from
Furman,
Furman.
baby.
Yeah, did not go to Furman.
Yeah,
Chamberlain was
Chamberlain
at
didn't go
Furman.
to Furman.
He just
Yep.
scored 1,000 points against Furman's company.
You know what I just realized earlier? That Xavier Woods, the professional wrestler, went to Furman.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
The
What,
one
you
that
been
wrestles with Kofi Kingston.
you've been watching.
Bro, don't underestimate me, dude.
Yeah, bro.
I'm
That's
just saying.
yeah. Xavier, he's a beast.
Yeah, he went to Furman.
Kofi Kingston.
And Clint
I ain't heard
Dempsey.
that name in a while.
Okay.
The soccer
Yep.
player, Clint
I-
Dempsey, went to Furman.
I would have gotten that. He's the one.
Well, I'll just ask him who won the 2023 World Series. The Braves just played them in a series. this weekend.
Like last night.
Like last night.
The Astros didn't win 2023.
No, they
did
didn't.
they? Who?
Same state.
Who?
Same state.
The Rangers?
Yeah,
Yeah, the Rangers. Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
No, I didn't think so.
I think that gives them a third shot right there.
Well, now my third shot should come because I played high school golf with Lucas Glover from
Oh,
Wade Hampton.
the glove.
So
There you go.
Lucas was the first person I ever played with, and I said, I ain't ever gonna be that.
Yeah, bro.
Like, he's got something I don't have.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
he
reality
won the
check.
British Open. So
Yes, he
like,
did.
Yeah, he went through a
a
little spill at the end of last year, man.
But he's
where
still
got-
been playing good.
He has.
So
Yeah, I mean,
played
he
good in
played
the
good at the Masters. I
Mhm.
think he probably shot par every day.
He
Yep.
finished top 10, I think, in the Masters.
I don't know where he played. He played a good final round.
He
I know,
finished
to mo-
under.
to move up the leaderboard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He finished under.
Yeah.
That's good. He'll get 3 shots at the end.
All right, 3 shots.
Oh, 100%.
No question.
I mean, he's going to probably get 15.
Yeah.
He's going to get one till he makes it, you know.
But you'll see
He's
the
taking
one.
something
That's
home
right.
today,
Yeah.
okay?
You'll see the
y'all
one.
are kind. Y'all are
Taking
kind.
home something today. But
Yep.
Alan, thank you so much for coming and
Man,
hanging
I'm
with
honored.
us.
I'm honored. I know it's taken us a while to get this on the calendar, and I looked at my week ahead last night, and this was the thing I was the most excited about
Yeah,
that I
man.
have. And I don't know what y'all's viewership is like, but man, the work y'all have done in Anderson for the people that aren't in Anderson, it's wild. I mean, the Bridge Center is saving people's lives. And I've gotten to like sit back and be a part of it, and the fact that our church has had the opportunity to partner with y'all in so many different and distinct ways, it's just an honor. And so I'm honored to be here, thankful for y'all, and just love what you're doing. So
Yeah, man.
thanks for having me.
Yeah. You know, the thing I think in this context that creates such a bond is the bond of suffering.
That's right.
Mm.
You know, like there's just something about a bond of suffering. And in this case, it's drug addiction.
Yep.
Yep.
You know, it's amazing how that one aspect, despite all the differences you have with people, can bring a friendliness and a fellowship. And so from the day that I met you, before we even did ministry together, or before we ever really built a friendship, there was that bond that I just knew I'm drawn to this guy for some reason.
Yeah.
You know, and it's our stories, man. It's how similar those things are. And so I know the listeners, including my guys, are just real eager to hear about your life and how addiction came in and almost stole it.
Yep.
But before addiction, a lot of times we talk about, you know, the way that we were raised. And if I'm not mistaken, you wasn't raised in a broken home.
No, not at all, man. I tell people you couldn't find a decent reason for me to have fallen into drug addiction. Like 2 great parents, I had good teachers, good pastors along the way. Never had a traumatic experience, you know, in terms of abuse or neglect or anything like that. We never lacked for anything, but even in the privilege that I had, like we weren't the spoiled kids either, where it was like my parents just gave me everything I wanted.
Sure.
And, you know, didn't buy me a new Mercedes when I went to high school. I drove a Nissan Altima. So like they had an awareness of helping me learn what the world was like. And like we said, I ended up going to Furman, got a bunch of scholarships to go there, mostly academic. And I mean, Furman was good for me.
But you
And
had,
so-
but even like even in college, you wasn't drinking or using.
No,
like
I wasn't.
that ain't a part of your story for a
No.
long time, is it?
I became a believer at 8 and really at probably 12, 13, made a decision that this is important to me. I want this to be a part of my life. Lacked understanding in the way, still lack understanding in a lot of ways. But in as much as a teenager can know that and be committed to it, I was, and took that to school with me, and you know, did some dumb things, I'm sure, but didn't drink, didn't use. One of the weird things is I have been a full-blown drug addict and have never smoked a cigarette. So that's the kind of kid I was. I wasn't going to touch that stuff. And the first time I remember using, so I grew up with migraine headaches, and it was pre-opiate epidemic. And so when you had migraines, once they went through a couple of the treatments that were there, which were like high caffeine content things, stuff like that, they went to narcotics pretty quickly. And so I had been exposed to that type of medication, but the first time I remember misusing it, and it's, you know, in retrospect, it's so strange to think about it, because something in my mind was thinking about the relief that the drugs provided for me to use it in this context. But I woke up to a phone call one morning, and a buddy of mine, Rhett Hendricks, Hendricks Veterinarian Clinic on 81, their oldest son had been diagnosed with osteosarcoma as a kid, had a leg amputated at about 16. And we were really close as young children, and knew one another really well throughout his teenage years. But he had done the whole journey with that, lost his leg, and my dad called me one morning and told me that he had passed away. And I just remember walking to the medicine cabinet and getting 2 pills and taking them and getting back into bed. And you know, I don't know why that's what my mind went to, but it is. And that was the first time that I can definitively remember I misused drugs in that moment.
It was pain pills?
Yep. They were called Vicaprofen. It was hydrocodone and ibuprofen.
Vicaprofen. You ever heard that? I've never heard that.
It was Vicodin, but it it was ibuprofen. Same thing.
I would have tried 3 right off the rip.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah,
As soon as
yeah.
I heard about it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt.
And so, I mean, I remember that being my very first, and you know, it didn't get me right then. It wasn't like I went from that moment to daily use, but I know that was misusing the drug. And so,
Question.
Yeah.
You know, we often say that, you know, alcohol or weed is the gateway drug, but we also say, you know, most of the time it's trauma. That's the gateway.
Yep.
This sounds like a traumatic incident for you. Someone you were close to since childhood. You watched them suffering. It sounds like trauma. And then when he passed, boom.
Yep. And I think for me, that privileged childhood and early life, I had no context for processing pain. I mean, truly, I just hadn't experienced much. And so trying to navigate that, I wasn't alone, but I mean, you know, I don't even know to what degree I knew how to invite people to help me in that. How do you talk to your roommate or your good friend or your parent? Like, I don't, could have talked to my folks about it for sure. Just didn't know how to.
Yeah.
And so, for sure, it was a traumatic event. I remember completely falling apart at the funeral. And then I think I don't even think I spent the night at home. That evening going back to school, and you just flip it back, you get back to it. And failed a class that semester, which was a huge deal for me. Like, I didn't fail classes, and but didn't deal with it. Thought I was going to be able to just keep going, couldn't, and just didn't know how to cope with that.
Now, was this high school or college?
College.
Okay, so this happened when you were in college.
I was a junior at Furman.
So when you said that you woke up and took those pills, you were in college.
Yep, in college, and like I said, that didn't even begin the descent for me. Or excuse me, it did begin the descent, but it didn't take me, you know, to the kind of daily use what you fall into.
Yeah.
So you fast forward a little bit, graduated from Furman, came back to Anderson, got a great job with a good company that the people were great to me with, married my current wife. We've been married 22 years in June, so I'm very thankful for that.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, she's a good one, and
You don't look like you could have been married for 22 years.
I appreciate that, but I have been, and I feel like I could have been.
Was you 6 when you got married?
Yeah, right.
No, we were both 22, I think. But you know, we had sort of this idyllic life Jill had literally been the homecoming queen. She came back to teach at our high school alma mater. I had a good job. Life was easy. We bought a little house. We were fixing it up. And then we'd been married 15 months, and I got diagnosed with cancer. And that was a shock. That was for sure trauma, in a different kind of way. And again, didn't know how to talk to anybody about it. But what I did know, and I remember this even before the surgery, which is, again, one of those things that something in my mind was a little off. I remember thinking after the ultrasound, well, at least I'll be able to get painkillers. And it's like, so I hadn't even had this thing, you know. Now, I never didn't take a painkiller that was there. But once the door was swung open and they were available, I began to take them as much as I could get them.
What's that remembered success?
Yeah.
It's not like Allen's going into this like, I got cancer and I'm going to take these pills and I'm going to tear it down. It's just this idea of, I've got this experience with this medicine, and one of the things that is a plus in my brain is that I tend to feel good.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing, and, you know, I don't want to get all spooky with it, but, you know, temptation, you know, sin is crouching at the door, you know. And it's like that little whisper, whether it's from the flesh, whether it's from, you know, the demonic realm or whatever. It's like that little whisper that we take a hold of that seems so insignificant that we believe.
Yep.
I will get painkillers.
Well, even before that, it's like, you know, when he said that his friend died and he doesn't know where the thought came from. It's just next thing you know, you're walking to the medicine cabinet, you pop two, you go lay back down. At that moment, it's like seed planted. And takes root, you know, and then later when you get the diagnosis, it's like, boom, fruit pops from it, you know.
Well, for me, it's a desire to control the situation. So I've got these two circumstances that are completely outside of my control, and I think what my mind goes to is what will give me some level of control over what I'm feeling. And for us, nothing does it like the drink or the drug.
Yeah, it's true.
Because that's a 5-minute, 30-minute solution. And that's a level of control that I don't have in many other areas of my life. Now, the caveat and the catch-22 there is that eventually it controls you. And that's what I would have never... See, my ego, and I don't know about y'all. Y'all might have a little bit of ego too. But my ego told me nothing's ever going to get me. I'm smarter than this. I'm better than this. I'll outwork... Like, I have the addict mentality in every area of my life, and so the idea that something was going to get me, that just wasn't going to happen. And so I was going to have this control over my emotions that was almost magical, until ultimately I gave complete control of myself over to it.
So tell us, you get this diagnosis with cancer. I mean, obviously it's traumatic. It turns your and your wife's world upside down, but tell us a little more about that.
Yep. So, diagnosed with cancer, you're 23 years old. It's the word itself. Words are powerful, and I mean, Bradley, you're a wordsmith, so you know this. Words are powerful, and the word cancer is in and of itself.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a weight, there's a societal context to it. Like, there's all kinds of stuff. We have organizations devoted to eradicating cancer that raise billions of dollars a year, and so you're sitting there at 23, you hear that, and you go wide-eyed. Yeah. And so your mind immediately goes worst case. Is Jill going to be a 23-year-old widow? Things like that. And so we navigate that. I got great medical care here in Anderson. 2 surgeries, and I was cancer-free. There was some fear associated with that. We chose not to do any chemotherapy because I wanted to be a dad as much as just about anything in life, and chemotherapy would have prevented that. And even with the second surgery I had, we didn't know if we were going to be able to get pregnant or not. So every 3 months I went in for some blood tests, and that was traumatic in a different way. But in retrospect, there was a level of stress with that was pretty terrifying. So like a couple of weeks before, and then until the results came back after, every 3 months, I look back on going, there was a level of anxiety that I was unable to articulate. at the time that I think now, you know, I'm clean 12 and a half years, have worked the steps, have had good sponsorship along the way, have good friends that are authentic and transparent and honest. And so now I think I would be able to navigate that in a way that I could just say, I'm scared to death. Like, I don't know what to do with this feeling. I'm scared. Just talk to me.
You just didn't have that outlet.
Yep, I didn't. And I had great friends, but we just didn't talk that way. And like, I'm sitting here with you. We met maybe 2-3 times. But I know your history well enough, and you know mine well enough that it's like I could call you and be like, "Man, I'm scared to death, and I don't know what to do," and you'd say that makes sense. And I just didn't have that at the time. Yeah. So, you know, anytime that came up, I had access to these pills, and I'd take them.
That you were getting for your diagnosis.
Yeah, I'd gotten them. The second surgery was
a
big one. They had cut me, you know, sternum to my waist and kind of taken any of the soft tissue that I didn't need out. And it hurt, and I had some nerve pain as a result that would run down my leg. In my mind, it was, you know, level, you know, the pain scale 1 to 10, and the faces.
10.
In my mind, it was an 8, but in reality, it was probably a 2.
Sure.
But I told him it was an 8, and so I was getting the painkillers, and also again, this is pre-opiate epidemic, so I mean there are some shady ways that probably were illegal. I don't know the statute of limitations on some of those things, but I was doing some stuff. There you go. I was doing some stuff to get pills that I probably shouldn't have been doing, and certainly was doctor shopping, and
or couldn't.
And
now.
Not to fast forward too much, but no joke, some of the best conversations I have had or amends I've made to some of those doctors. And the kindness that I've been shown from them is like, hey, I lied to you and I'm sorry. And I mean, just what a cool thing that we get on this side of the 12 steps, to be able to see the forgiveness that people are willing to offer. Because I burned a lot. I'm sitting here looking at this bridge on your wall. I burned a lot of bridges, and God was just faithful to give me those opportunities. So anyway, I was using the pills, especially when the blood work would come up, you know, probably taking them close to as prescribed, not any sort of crazy stuff. And then I got offered a job at New Spring. I was 24. I'd been working my current job for 2.5 years. Great company, really loved the people, didn't love the work. In retrospect, it's because I was lazy. I mean, you know, I wouldn't have said it at the time, but it's 100% true. But I think I knew at the time that this thing is brewing in the background. It's going to take control of my life. And I thought, well, you can't be a pastor and a drug addict at the same time. So I'm going to go work for the church, and that's going to allow me to solve this other problem, and everything's going to be great. But, I mean, y'all all know the little saying in the program, wherever you go, there you are. And so I just took my problems with me, and loved working for the church. It went well for a while. I was managing some things. I throw managing in air quotes or whatever, because it's brewing, and in retrospect, I can see it. But we get pregnant about 1.5 years in, maybe less than that, a year and a half into my job at the church, and I actually announced it from stage, and then we found out the next week there wasn't a heartbeat. And that was a switch for me. Like, that was where it went from I'm trying to manage this thing and do everything else.
I don't care.
To I don't care. And so rather than it being a side sin hustle, it becomes the only thing I care about. And including the good things in my life, work, Jill, even faith in a lot of ways. And so I just turned my back on everything and stuck a middle finger up and ate painkillers.
So let me ask a question real
Go
quick.
ahead.
Did you keep the job, or did you quit?
I didn't quit.
Okay, so that's something that we see a lot, is people continuing on in that ministry, you know, despite what's going on. Interesting. I was just curious.
Well, and I think too, with it being this time, like in your mind, there's no problem.
Yeah, I think when the switch happened, I don't know that I identified the problem. I think pretty quickly after the miscarriage, I knew things weren't right. It's a great question as to why I didn't quit, because I don't think I did.
You put your middle finger up to everything, so why would you quit?
I don't think that I didn't believe in God, but I was mad at it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was angry at God that here's this thing that we were scared we were going to lose, and then we realized we didn't lose it, and then you took it from us, and I was just angry. And so really the only thing that kept me from losing the job really quickly was an incredible team that was around me. I had an assistant at the time, and I won't say her name, but she was phenomenal, and she did a lot of the job that I was being paid to do, and kept them from having to fire me. But ultimately, you know, I just quit doing anything productive, and so ultimately, I did get fired from the church, I believe in 2008. And anytime I say that on any sort of public platform, I acknowledge they were 100% right to do it. They made every possible effort to help me save my job. They were so good to me in spite of me not being willing to do anything to help them, and I forced them to fire me. Rarely do you find a situation where someone is 100% responsible for the decision. In that dynamic, I was 100% responsible for it. And, you know, even in that, though, I won't say his name either, but my current neighbor was in a lay leadership role with the church at the time. And he sat me down and he said, "We know that you have a problem. We want to help you. Let us help you, please." And I was like, "You don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Y'all don't understand."
Yeah, it sounds about
Lying
typical.
and I mean just and such like indignity. Like, I'm just indignant about you accusing me of this, and it's all true.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and you know, I mean, y'all have all been on the other side of those conversations. Now you see yourself in the person, you're like, and you just, you know, he did what he's like. Okay.
Yep.
And
I see where you are.
Yeah. And
Well, it's
so-
heartbreaking too, man, because that led me to many truckloads of pain.
Oh God.
Well, at that point, pain's the only thing that'll teach you.
That's what I had. My ego was, I had to have pain teach me. And so from 2008 to 2011, that's what happened. And it was God's kindness to just allow me to experience all the pain that I was inviting into my life. And I do think at that point I knew I had a problem. I didn't see the escape hatch. So 2008, 9, in that period of time, I think I just became resigned to the fact that I was going to die like that. You know, I did the treatment thing in 2010, and I think in treatment I thought it was going to work, and then I got out and I had to live life on life's terms. And
How long was treatment?
42 days.
Okay.
Yep. Bougie treatment center. I had good insurance at the time. My parents, I think, were desperate for me to do anything that took me out of the equation as long as was possible.
Yeah.
And so my dad basically came and said, "I'll pay whatever insurance doesn't pay." And so between dad and good insurance, I went to a bougie rehab in Mill Creek, North Carolina. They were great. I mean, they were good people who, if I'd had ears to hear it, had the solution. I just wouldn't listen. Got out, did the meeting thing, stayed clean for a little while. By this point, Eddie was 2. Charlie had just been born, my second son. I'm trying desperately to stay clean for this baby, you know. But as we know, you can't stay clean for anybody other than yourself. And, you know, that's another part of my story that I think is valuable for folks to hear. I loved them so much. I do love Jill, obviously, and love the boys, obviously, now. But I loved them in the midst of all that insanity.
Yeah.
But my ability to demonstrate it was gone. Like, there was nothing about my behavior that indicated it, but I really did. And I had that conversation with a spouse recently whose husband's in active addiction. I was like, he can love you while doing all this crazy stuff. I was like, that doesn't mean that you accept his behavior or anything like that, but you can at least take some solace in, this is not about you. Like, he's not doing this at you. He's just doing it.
Well, you know, the thing is, it's like, y'all seen The Green Mile?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like the warden's wife gets cancer.
Yep.
and she's up there and she's cussing. And he understands that in her sickness, she's doing that because she's hurting, and he doesn't hold it against her.
Yeah.
You know, and if you had gotten chemo and you had cancer, you know, and the cancer made you act a certain way, everyone would give the excuse. He's got cancer. He's fighting cancer. Cut him a break. But the disease of addiction doesn't get that same treatment from people because they don't understand that it is actually a disease.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, do you love them? I mean, you give them a lie detector test. Do you love your kids? They would say yes.
And pass.
And pass.
Yep.
But then, because of the allergy of the body and the phenomenon of craving, that when they have that drug in them, they will choose the drug over the child.
Because it's beyond their mental control.
It is beyond their control. It is literally an allergic reaction to the drugs.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that we can do, and y'all are doing this, and I'm grateful for it in a platform like this one, is for 4 mostly normal guys to articulate that in the way that you just did. And for folks to go, I can't understand that, but I believe them enough that I'll try to fill in the gap with some trust of that reality being true. Because, my wife is a teetotaler, and she is the purest hearted human that I know, and she cannot understand that.
Yeah.
She's never experienced it. And all I can do is, empathize. I get that you can't see it, but I'm telling you it's true.
Yeah, let me get 2 minutes real quick to just put this in there so that maybe people could understand. So the disease of addiction is a 3-part illness, and the first 2 parts cannot be treated. There are 3 types of users. There are casual users, hardcore users, and hopeless users. Casual user drinks at the football game, nothing's wrong. Drinks at the Mexican restaurant, nothing's wrong. Drinks, whatever. Put it down. The hardcore, they drink and don't stop. They get DUIs. Wife comes and threatens to leave them. They go to jail. They say, "Man, I better stop or I'm gonna lose my life." This person goes to AA, goes to meetings, goes to church, and they stop. Straight out of willpower and the fear of consequences. But the third is the hopeless addict. This person actually has lost the ability to use with ease. Dis-ease. Lost the ability to use with ease. This person has an actual sickness, disease that's been formed over time. It's like diabetes. Someone can be predisposed to diabetes through an unhealthy lifestyle. They form the disease that now has to have medical treatment. This person who's formed diabetes has to have insulin. Well, the person who may have started out as a hardcore user uses drugs so much that they form this disease that now has a 3-part illness to it. The first part is the allergy of the body. That is when this person puts drugs in, they have an allergic reaction. It's just like someone who's allergic to shellfish or peanuts. When this person has allergic reaction, their throat closes up. No one would say this is a bad person when they have allergic reaction. The drug addict's allergic reaction is when they put the drugs in, they have the phenomenon of craving, which means they crave more, and they can never get enough. And they use until the money runs out or they just can't get any more, and then they stop. When that person stops and the drugs get out of their system, the second part of the 3-part illness kicks in, which is called the obsession of the mind. The obsession of the mind happens when they don't have drugs, and it is a thought that pushes out every other thought that tells them to go get the thing they're allergic to. This is the dilemma of the hopeless addict. A body that can't use and a mind that can't not use. And then neither one of those can be treated. The only part of the 3-part illness that the hopeless addict has that can be treated is the spiritual malady. This spiritual sickness is a result of people harboring resentments, fears, and harms. And when they harbor those, it blocks them off from the power of God. And then it causes their spirit to get sick. While their spirit is sick, the obsession happens, and then they go get what they're allergic to. The only way to treat this person is to get them to deal with resentments, fears, and harms. When you get them to deal with those 3 areas, it unblocks them from the power of God. The power of God flows into their life. They become spiritually healthy. And the obsession to use leaves on its own. And therefore, they don't put what they're allergic to in. So that's the 3-part illness that the hopeless addict is dealing with. So,
man, that is so beautiful and concise. And I think for anybody that is trying So I mean, y'all are gonna have people every time listen to this just looking for that glimmer of hope. Because I remember being in it and just wanting something to give me some hope. That summary, and it resonates because I've lived it. And it's another thing that we can, as mostly normal men today, can just attest to and say that's very real, because that's exactly what happened for me. And for a while on the other side of being clean, you're just I just don't want to use it. Like that's it. And then you begin to feel that obsession leave. And that's the work of God in your life. And I've gotten to experience that. But I don't remember which one. Where are we talking?
Well, we were talking about how Eddie was 2, and and the baby, you had a baby,
Charlie,
and he was trying to stay sober because
who's 6'4" now.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Right,
13.
crazy.
So I'm like, I got to stay clean for them. After Charlie's born, I'm desperately trying to stay clean. And then at some point there's a relapse. I get caught really quickly. I don't remember what the circumstances were. And it's not comical, but if you don't laugh, you'll cry. Like there were so many of those moments where it was like, I'm done, and you get found out, or you think you've lied your way out of something, that I really don't remember the sequence of events. As also I was drunk or high for a lot of it. So what are you going to do? But, and that's another thing that I remember. We have all these different things that we think are going to work in addiction. One of mine was to switch. It was like, well, alcohol's legal. And I keep doing crazy stuff to get these pills, because that was, 15-ish years ago, the opiate epidemic becomes the opiate epidemic, and all of a sudden the supply dries up. So you're either buying heroin or you're finding something else. And so I'm like, well, maybe I can drink successfully. And I might have drunk successfully like twice. I might have had less than 5 drinks 2 different times, because I drank the same way I took the pills. And alcohol was much harder on my body than the pills were.
Because that's that phenomenon of craving that kicks in. So when you put it in, because you're a hopeless, it sets off this phenomenon of craving that makes you get more and more and more and more. Yeah.
And so that was the story after our second son was born. Is alcohol is a part of it. Alcohol is cheap and easily accessible and all that. And so I'm just drinking all the time, and get found out again. I won't do it. It gets worse. Ultimately, Jill's pregnant with our 3rd child. Eddie's 4, Charlie's 1. She finds me stumbling around the house at 3 a.m, just out of my head. And I end up in the ER, strapped to the bed. They find an empty Xanax bottle that she had been taking because I had been causing her such insanity. She had these massive panic attacks, and there had been 58 in the bottle, and the next morning there were none. And so I had dumped 58 Xanax on top of about a liter of vodka. And I don't remember doing it. Like, it wasn't an attempt necessarily. I remember not caring if I lived or died, but the last thing I remember is this desperation to just go to sleep. And in my drunkenness, I still remembered that she had some Xanax somewhere. And so I went on a hunt, and I remember finding it in her car. And I took 2. That's the last thing I remember. And the next thing I remember is I'm in the hospital hallucinating. One of my favorite stories to tell is the ceiling tiles were just like this. And I'm laying there strapped to the bed. And the little holes in the ceiling tiles become fish, and they're swimming around. And the fish become bigger, and then those fish get eaten up by whales, and then the whales start eating boats. And this whole, have y'all seen Van Gogh's Starry Night?
Yeah.
Y'all know what I'm talking about? So the whole scene is that, except it's aquatic and it's moving. And I'm laying there in the hospital bed, and I can see it right now. As real as you're sitting there, the ceiling tiles are moving, and I have this awareness that that's not real, but I need to remember this because it's going to be important at some point.
Wow.
And I don't know why to this day. I really appreciate Van Gogh's Starry Night, but I mean, saw water running down the walls that wasn't there, just out of my head. I remember overhearing Jill and my dad talking just outside about what if he never comes back? Like, what if this is who he is? And there were real concerns. I mean, I had real concerns about, as I'm coming to, am I going to be so burned out that I'm not going to be able to function?
Yeah.
So I get out, go to the house. Jill says, you can't live here. Kindest thing anybody's ever done.
I was about
for
to
me.
say, good for her.
Yeah, pain's becoming the teacher.
Yep.
Kindest thing anybody's ever done for me.
Yeah.
She tells me I can't come home. And, you know, I'm desperate to know what she's going to do. And remember, like, I think some men really do get a lot of their identity, purpose, whatever, out of their families, and others may not. But for me, it was everything.
Well, you know, we need to really hit this point home, because a lot of our ministry is to families, and you have a wife with 3 now, two and pregnant,
2 and pregnant,
2 young ones and pregnant, and telling you, her husband, you can't live here. Best thing she ever did for you is what you say
her,
on this
and
side.
them kids.
Yeah, everyone involved. Yeah,
100%. It was so kind and hard.
Yeah.
I mean, to do it by herself, but
and it was love.
It was love, and it was love that was action, not feeling, because she was not feeling it at the time, and didn't for a while.
Did she come up with that idea on her own?
No, she had good counsel around her.
So important.
She saw it. She was under the covering of our church. They were good to her during the time, and you know, I bowed out at church for a while, and she didn't do that.
She kept going.
Yep, she stayed plugged in and involved, and that was an important thing for her, so that she didn't feel like she was making decisions in isolation.
Yeah.
So she tells me I can't come home, and for probably 10 days, I am in that kind of binary thinking of, I'm either gonna find some magical solution that's eluded me to this point, or I'm gonna kill myself. It's like I could not fathom living life without them. You know, there's a spot.
Did you tell her that?
No.
Because, you know, sometimes that's what people will do, is they'll go and they'll tell the person who's holding their feet to the fire, I'm going to kill myself. And then it causes them to ease up on the decision. So you were saying you were experiencing all that, though.
Yeah, I was. No, I would have been aware even then that was unfair to put on her. I think if I had done that, it would have been trying to weaponize something. And I really like, at this point, I was convinced. I've figured out in treatment in 2009-10 that I was a drug addict and alcoholic. I just thought I was hopeless. Which by your definition I was. Which, praise God, he was willing to free me from it. So for about 10 days, I'm in that space. At some point during that time, 3 guys who I'd done, you know, small group with through the years came to my parents' house and sat down with me and kind of read me the riot act. Like, hey, you say you're a Christian, you don't act like one at all. You say you want to be a husband and a dad, you don't act like it at all. You got to figure some things out. They said some great stuff. They said some stupid stuff. They had no idea. I mean, none of them were in recovery. They didn't have any idea, you know, how to handle a former pastor who was living this life, but they were honest, and they did the best they knew to do. It was basically like an attempt at a 12th step from 3 non-addicts. That was kind of them, and it was helpful. And one of the things that was really helpful about that conversation was one of the guys said, you need to take a walk. And for some reason it was super cold in November. And I was like, man, it's 25 degrees outside. And he said, you need to be cold. And I remember the phrase, you need to be cold, which is hilarious in retrospect. But I take this walk around my parents' neighborhood, and I'm asking God for a burning bush experience or a talking donkey, or, you know, give me something magic to fix this thing.
Like right now.
Yeah. And so I get to the end of the walk, And I really was praying those kinds of prayers to a God that I was wondering if he was up there or not. And I remember just this impression of, you need to get a job. Like, not anything, nothing miraculous around me, just this sense of, you need to get a job. And I was like, all right. And I'm thinking, who do I know? Because I'd always been able to find a connection that could get me a position with a company that was white collar work, doing something that people respected and all that. And after having that thought, the next thought was, no, you need to get a real job. And so what I did have at the time was some willingness, even prior to getting plugged into NA. And so I printed up 25 resumes and drove up and down Main Street in 28 and handed them out at Walmart and Bojangles and anywhere else that would take them. Mm-hmm. I got a rough job.
How about that, bro?
Yeah.
I got a rough job.
As a graduate.
Yeah.
College graduate.
Two degrees from Furman.
Yeah.
I'd been working on a master's at Clemson when I got diagnosed with cancer. I mean, I was well educated. I'm reasonably smart.
But Bojangles wasn't beneath you.
Not
at that point.
Well, at that moment, and that's one of the gifts of people being honest with you, and Jill doing things like kicking me out of the house. Truly, nothing was beneath me. Mm-hmm. Like, if you, I'm not going to start naming jobs, but like, you could have given me anything, and I'd have said, all right, I'll take it.
But that's that gift, bro.
Yeah, it is, bro.
Of desperation.
It is.
Oh, I'm telling you, man, it's amazing how the pain of getting there is significant, and it's very hard on our families. And you really, even as us who knows pain can be a great teacher, don't wish it on anybody. But it became the catalyst for Allen, for his marriage, for his children's future. Of getting it is so little about the pills, but so much about where it took him.
Yeah.
And that was to the end of himself.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, dude, we focus on addiction and all the things that we teach, but like, truthfully, the greatest gift is that it brought you down to size to a point where you realize